My hands were shaking as the alarm screamed through the bridge. Red lights flashed across every console. The sound was so loud that I could barely hear my own thoughts. I gripped the armrest of my captain's chair and tried to breathe. "Captain Holloway, you need to see this," my sensor officer shouted. His voice cracked with fear. "Something just came out of nowhere. It's massive." "I am Captain Daniel Holloway of the human ship called the Silver Arrow. We were on a simple mission to map some empty space near the edge of our solar system. It was supposed to be boring. It was supposed to be safe. Nothing ever happened this far from Earth." But now, on my main screen, I was looking at something that should not exist. The alien ship was huge. It was at least 40 times bigger than my ship. It had gold plates covering every surface. Purple flags hung from long poles that stuck out from its sides. Giant cannons pointed in every direction, and they all glowed with a strange orange light. The whole thing looked like a floating palace designed by someone who wanted to show off. "Are we in danger?" I asked. My voice sounded calm, but my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. "I do not know, sir," my first officer replied. Her name was Grace Bennett, and she had been my friend for 10 years. She was the smartest person on my ship. "But their weapons are active. They are pointing at us." Then the message came through our communication system. It was loud and angry, and it filled every speaker on the bridge. "Tremble before us, small creatures. You are now the property of the eternal empire of Zertax the Mighty. Surrender now or face the full strength of our forces." I stared at the screen. The voice had been deep and powerful, like something from a nightmare. But when the picture finally came through, I was not sure what to do with my face. The creature on the screen was tiny. He was maybe 3 feet tall. He was purple and had 4 short arms. On his head sat a crown made of pure gold that was bigger than his entire body. He sat on a huge throne that made him look like a child playing dress-up. Behind him stood warriors in shiny armor covered in fake jewels and silly ribbons. I tried to keep my face still. I really did. But then my sensor officer, a young man named Peter Clark, made a small sound. It was half a cough and half a laugh. He tried to hide it, but the damage was done. Grace covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders were shaking. I could see tears forming in her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. She was trying so hard not to laugh. "Silence," the purple creature shouted. "I am Zertax, ruler of 14 worlds. I have conquered thousands of enemies. You will kneel before me." 14 worlds. I almost said it out loud. We had 9 colonies in our own solar system. We had cities on Mars, bases on the moons of Jupiter, and mining stations in the asteroid belt. We had done all of that in less than 100 years. And this creature was bragging about 14 worlds like it was some great achievement. "Did he say 14? Peter whispered behind me. "Peter, please," I said through my teeth. "Not now." But it was too late. A soft laugh escaped from the engineering console. Then another one came from the navigation station. Soon my whole bridge was filled with the sound of people trying very hard not to laugh and failing badly. Zertax turned redder. Well, his purple skin turned a darker purple. He stood up from his giant throne, and I could see that his feet did not even touch the floor. He had to jump down from the seat like a small child climbing off a tall chair. "You dare to laugh at me," he screamed. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what I have done?" "I am very sorry," I said quickly. I was trying to save the situation. "My crew is just surprised. We have never met another species before. This is our first time." "Your first time?" Zertax looked confused. "You mean you have never been conquered before?" "No, we have not," I said. "Then you do not know the proper way to surrender," he said. He seemed relieved. "I will teach you. First, you bow your heads. Then you give up all your weapons. Then you pay tribute every year for the rest of time. It is very simple." Grace could not hold it in anymore. A loud laugh burst out of her mouth before she could stop it. She turned away and tried to pretend she was coughing, but everyone heard her clearly. Zyrtax pointed his tiny finger at the screen. His whole body was shaking now. "You are all marked for destruction," he said. "I will bring my entire fleet. I will crush your small ship like an insect. I will show you the true power of the Eternal Empire. Prepare yourselves for the grand invasion." The screen went black. For a moment, nobody on my bridge moved. We all just sat there, trying to understand what had just happened. Then Peter finally let out the laugh he had been holding, and once he started, the rest of us could not stop. Grace was laughing so hard she had to sit down on the floor. Peter was wiping tears from his eyes. Even I was laughing, and I was supposed to be the serious one. I was the captain. I was supposed to handle this with calm and wisdom. But how could I? A tiny purple creature in a huge crown had just declared war on all of humanity. He had threatened to destroy us with his grand invasion. And he had done it while standing on a throne that was way too big for him. "Captain," Grace finally said when she caught her breath, "did that really just happen?" "I think so," I said. "I am almost sure it did." "What do we do now?" I looked at my crew. They were all still smiling, but the smiles were starting to fade. The truth was setting in. We had just met our first alien species, and that species had declared war on us. It did not matter how silly they looked. It did not matter how tiny their leader was. They had huge ships and powerful weapons. They said they had conquered 14 worlds. That meant they knew how to fight. Didn't it? "Peter, run a full scan of their ship," I said. "I want to know everything about their weapons, their shields, and their power systems. Grace, contact Earth. Tell them what happened. Tell them to send help." "Yes, sir," they both said at the same time. As my crew got to work, I stared at the empty screen where Zyrtax had been. Something felt strange about all of this. A real empire would not send a single ship to threaten a new species. A real empire would not let their leader wear a crown that was bigger than his head. A real empire would not speak like a villain from an old story. Something was not right here, and I needed to find out what it was before Zyrtax came back with his grand invasion. "Captain," Peter called out a few minutes later, "I finished my scan." "What did you find?" "Their ship is huge and has a lot of weapons, but—" He paused. He looked at me with a strange expression on his face. "But what?" "Their engines are not protected. Their shields only cover certain parts of the ship, and their weapons are pointed in silly directions. If I wanted to destroy that ship, I could do it with half the missiles we have on board." I stared at him. Then I looked at Grace. She was looking back at me with the same confused face. "That cannot be right," I said. "They have been conquering worlds. They have traveled across space. They must know how to fight." "I ran the scan 3 times, sir," Peter said. "I am sure of the results." I sat back in my chair and thought hard. Something big was happening here, something I did not understand yet, but I knew one thing for certain. Zyrtax was coming back, and when he did, we needed to be ready. "Send the message to Earth," I told Grace, "and tell them we might be in trouble, but maybe not the kind of trouble they think." Grace nodded and turned to her console. I looked at the empty space where the giant gold ship had been just minutes ago. The stars looked the same as they always did, cold, distant, and silent, but everything had changed now. Humans were not alone anymore, and the first aliens we had met were the strangest creatures I could have ever imagined. I had a feeling this was only the beginning. The 3 days after our first meeting with Zyrtax were the longest 3 days of my life. Earth sent back a message telling us to hold our position and gather as much information as possible. They were sending a small fleet to join us, but it would take time for the ships to reach us. In the meantime, I had my team work around the clock. Peter studied every scan we had taken of the Eternal Empire ship. Grace tried to break into their communication signals, and our ship's computer expert, a quiet woman named Olivia Marsh, worked on understanding their language better. What we learned over those 3 days shocked us all. "Captain, you need to come to the science room." Olivia called me over the internal communication system. "You really need to see this." I walked down to the science room, which was filled with screens showing data, images, and text. Peter was there too. He had a strange smile on his face. "What did you find?" I asked. "Sir, I have been studying every signal we picked up from their ship," Olivia said, "and I have been comparing their technology to ours. I think I understand now why Zyrtax acted the way he did." "Tell me." Olivia took a deep breath. "The Eternal Empire has not fought a real battle in over 3,000 years. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "They have weapons, yes, and they have ships, but they have never used them in a real fight. Every species they have met just surrendered. As soon as they saw the big gold ship with the purple flags, they gave up without fighting." "That cannot be true," I said. "It is, sir. I found their historical records in the signals we picked up. They keep very detailed notes of every conquest, and in every single case, the other species saw their ship, heard Zyrtax's speech, and surrendered right away. They have never had to actually use their weapons." I sat down in one of the chairs. "So their weapons might not even work properly," Peter finished. "They were built to look scary, not to actually fight. They are covered in fancy designs and shiny metal, but the inside parts are poorly made. They use old technology that would have trouble hitting a moving target. Their soldiers," Olivia added, "wear armor that is mostly for show. The metal is thin. The plates are not joined properly. A simple bullet from one of our guns would go right through it." I stared at both of them. My mind was racing. "You are telling me," I said slowly, "that the Eternal Empire has been conquering worlds without actually fighting anyone?" "That is exactly what we are saying, sir," Olivia said. "They look impressive. They speak with big voices. They have the biggest ships most species have ever seen. And because of all that, everyone just gives up. They have been winning through tricks and fear for 3,000 years. They do not know how to actually fight a real battle." I leaned back in my chair and tried to think about this clearly. If what they were saying was true, then the grand invasion that Zyrtax had promised would not be as scary as it sounded. But I had to be careful. This information could be wrong. I needed to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. "Have we heard anything from Zyrtax since the first meeting?" I asked. "No, sir," Olivia said. "But based on the signals we have picked up from their ship, they are moving closer to our position. I think they are getting ready to come back." "How long do we have?" "Maybe one more day." I nodded. "Good work, both of you. Keep watching. Tell me the moment anything changes." I left the science room and walked back to the bridge. Grace was waiting for me. "Any news from Earth?" I asked. "The small fleet is still 2 days away," she said. "They cannot get here before Zyrtax comes back. So we are on our own." "Yes, sir." I thought about this for a moment. 4 human ships against who knew how many ships from the Eternal Empire. On paper, it looked bad. But if what Olivia and Peter had told me was true, we might actually have a chance. "Grace, I want you to send a message to every ship in the area. Tell them to be ready. Tell them to stay quiet and wait for my signal. If Zyrtax comes back with more ships, we are going to have to defend ourselves." "Yes, sir." I walked to the big window at the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a tiny purple creature in a giant crown was coming to destroy my ship. He was bringing his invasion fleet. He was planning to show us the full power of his empire. But maybe, just maybe, we had a trick or two of our own. I spent the next several hours making plans. I had my weapons officer, a strong man named Henry Brooks, work with Peter to figure out where the weak spots on the Eternal Empire ships would most likely be. I had Grace set up listening devices to pick up any communication between the enemy ships. I had Olivia prepare translation programs so that we could understand whatever they said. and I had my whole crew rest as much as they could. I knew that when Zyrtax came back, none of us would be getting any sleep for a long time. The next morning, at exactly 10 o'clock ship time, the alarms started ringing again. Captain Peter called. Multiple ships appearing on our scans. I count 200 ships, sir. 200 ships. My heart sank for a moment. That was a lot of ships. What kind of ships? I asked. Big ones, sir. Just like the first one we saw, covered in gold and purple flags. Are they moving in any kind of battle formation? Peter paused. Then he started to laugh. He laughed so hard he had to stop for a moment before he could answer. Sir, they are. They are in a parade formation. A perfect parade formation. All lined up in neat rows. They are broadcasting their positions on every channel. They are literally telling us where every single ship is. I stared at him. Grace stared at him. The whole bridge crew stared at him. A parade formation, I said, for an invasion. Yes, sir. The communication system beeped. Zyrtax's face appeared on the main screen. He was wearing an even bigger crown this time. It was so big that it kept falling over his eyes, and he had to keep pushing it back up with one of his 4 small hands. Captain of the small humans, he said in his deep voice, I have returned with my grand invasion fleet. You have 5 minutes to surrender. If you do not, we will begin our attack. We will give you fair warning before each shot so that you may prepare yourself properly. Grace turned away from the screen. Her whole body was shaking with silent laughter. I cleared my throat. I tried to sound serious. Thank you for the warning, Zyrtax, I said. I will think about it. Do not take too long, he said. Honor demands that we attack at the agreed time. The screen went black again. I looked at my crew. Every one of them was smiling. Some were holding their mouths to stop from laughing out loud. Peter had tears in his eyes again. Grace looked like she was about to burst. All right, everyone, I said. Battle stations. Henry, get your weapons ready. Peter, keep watching their movements. Grace, open a communication channel with our other ships. We are going to fight them. Yes, sir, my crew said together. As they got to work, I took one last look at the 200 gold ships sitting in a neat parade formation. They looked like toys. They looked like something a child would draw, but they were real, and they had just declared war on humanity. I had no idea what was about to happen, but I had a feeling that in a few hours, the whole galaxy was going to be very different than it had been that morning. And somehow, I was going to be right in the middle of it. The battle started exactly 5 minutes after Zyrtax finished his speech. I had expected maybe a sneaky attack. I had expected some kind of trick. What I got instead was one of the strangest experiences of my entire life. Captain, their lead ship is announcing their first attack, Grace said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the shock in it. They are telling us exactly which of our ships they plan to hit and with which weapon. Are you serious? I asked. Completely serious, sir. They are saying, and I quote, honor demands full warning so the enemy may brace themselves properly. I shook my head. I could not believe what I was hearing. Peter, where are they firing from? Their front cannons, sir. Big orange beams. They are charging them up now. How long until they fire? They said 10 seconds. They are actually counting down out loud over the open channel. I almost laughed. This was insane. This was completely, absolutely insane. Henry, when they fire, I want you to move us. A simple dodge, up and to the left. Then hit their engines with a missile. Aim for the exposed part. Yes, sir, Henry said. His hands flew across his weapon controls. 3, the enemy voice counted. 2, 1, fire. The orange beam shot out from the lead enemy ship. It was big and bright, and it moved slowly. Very slowly. It was so slow that I could have walked to a different part of the ship before it reached us. Henry moved our ship easily. The beam missed us by a wide distance and went harmlessly into empty space. Then Henry fired his missile. It hit the engine of the enemy ship and destroyed it instantly. The big gold ship started to drift without power. Its cannons stopped glowing. Its purple flags began to spin slowly as the ship turned in circles. "Enemy ship is out of the fight, sir," Peter reported. He sounded amazed. "One down," I said. 199 to go. The communication system beeped again. Zyrtax appeared on screen. He looked confused and upset. "Captain Holloway," he said, "you did not brace yourself for our attack. That is not how battles work. You are supposed to stay still and accept the shot. That is the honorable way." "I am sorry," I said. I was trying very hard not to smile. "On Earth, we do things a little differently." "Differently? How differently?" "Well, we try not to get hit." Zyrtax was quiet for a moment. His 4 hands moved around as if he was trying to understand what I had said. "You try not to get hit," he repeated. "Yes. But that is cheating." "No, that is just fighting," I said. "This is not proper at all," he said. "We will need to discuss this with the Honor Council after the battle, but for now my second ship will fire. Prepare yourselves. And this time please stand still." I looked at Grace. Grace looked at me. We both just shook our heads. The second enemy ship began its countdown. We dodged again. Henry hit its engines. Another gold ship started spinning in circles. The third ship tried something different. Instead of announcing its attack, it tried to sneak up on us from the side. But because all 200 enemy ships had been broadcasting their positions on open channels, we knew exactly where it was. When it came close, we were ready. Henry fired 2 missiles. The ship was done. "Their shields are holding up pretty well," Peter said, "but only on the front of the ships. Their backs and sides are completely open, and their engines have no protection at all." "Why would they build ships like that?" Grace wondered out loud. "Because they never thought anyone would actually fight back," I said. "If everyone just surrenders when they see you, why would you need proper shields? Why would you need real weapons?" By now, 10 of their ships were floating uselessly in space, and we had not taken a single hit. Zyrtax came back on the screen. He looked upset. "Captain Holloway, I must protest. You are not fighting with honor. Your ships keep moving. You are firing at our engines instead of our main bodies. This is not how war is done." "How long has it been since the Eternal Empire fought a real battle?" I asked. Zyrtax paused. "I do not understand the question." "When was the last time anyone actually fought back against you?" He thought about this. His 4 hands moved slowly. Finally, he answered. 3,012 years ago. But that was a minor disagreement. The other species surrendered within the first hour. "And before that?" "It has been mostly peaceful, yes. But that does not matter. We are the Eternal Empire. We have conquered 14 worlds. We are the most feared force in this part of the galaxy." "Are you?" I said softly. "Or did people just tell you that?" Zyrtax did not answer. I looked at my main screen. Our 3 human ships were in a tight formation, moving fast. The Eternal Empire ships were spread out in their silly parade formation, and most of them could not even move properly because they were blocking each other. It was like watching a group of children who had never played a sport before trying to beat a professional team. "Henry, take out 10 more of their ships. Focus on the ones closest to their main flagship. We are going to take their leader alive." "Yes, sir." Over the next 20 minutes, we destroyed the engines of about 30 Eternal Empire ships. Not one of them managed to hit us. Not one of them even came close. Their weapons were too slow. Their gunners could not track moving targets. Their shields failed as soon as we figured out the pattern of their power supply, which took Peter about 5 minutes because they were broadcasting that information too. By the time I ordered our ships to stop attacking, more than half of Zyrtax's fleet was floating without power. The rest were trying to turn their ships around, but they kept running into each other because they had never practiced moving in any other formation besides a parade. "Captain, the flagship is isolated," Peter said. "No other ships can help it. Open a channel to Zyrtax." The screen came to life. Zyrtax was still sitting on his giant throne, but now his crown had fallen completely off. It sat on the floor beside him. His 4 hands were shaking. What just happened?" he asked. "You lost a battle," I said. "Your first real battle in 3,000 years. But that is not possible. We are the Eternal Empire." "Zyrtax," I said gently, "I need you to listen to me carefully. Your whole empire was a lie. Your ships were not built to fight. Your weapons were not built to work. Your soldiers were not trained to fight. Everything you have was designed to scare people into surrendering before a real battle could even start." "No," he whispered, "that cannot be." "It is, and for 3,000 years it worked. But today you met a species that did not know it was supposed to be afraid of you." Zyrtax was silent for a long time. He picked up his crown and looked at it. He turned it over in his 4 hands. "My grandfather told me this crown was the symbol of our power," he said quietly. "He said that anyone who saw it would kneel. He said our ships were the most powerful in the galaxy." "Your grandfather believed what his grandfather told him," I said, "and so on, going back to the beginning. But somewhere along the way, someone stopped actually fighting. They just started looking scary. And it worked for so long that you forgot what a real fight even looked like." "What happens now?" Zyrtax asked. I thought about this. He was a defeated leader. His fleet was broken. His entire empire was about to find out that their all-powerful emperor had just been beaten by 3 small human ships. "Now," I said, "you are going to help me. You are going to tell me everything about the species you have conquered, every planet, every population, every deal you forced them to make, and then we are going to visit them, together." "Why?" "Because they need to know the truth. They need to know that they can stop being afraid." Zyrtax looked at his crown one more time. Then he set it down on the floor and did not pick it up again. "I understand," he said. I turned off the communication and sat back in my chair. My crew was quiet. The battle was over. And somehow, without anyone getting hurt on either side, we had just changed the entire galaxy forever. "Grace, send a message to Earth. Tell them we won. Tell them. Tell them they are not going to believe this." "Yes, sir," she said with a smile. I looked out the window at the field of broken gold ships drifting slowly in space. Their purple flags still waved proudly, even though there was no one left to salute them. It was a strange sight, beautiful in a sad sort of way. For 3,000 years, these ships had been the most feared sight in this part of the galaxy. Now they were just floating decorations. And the species who had been paying their taxes, bowing their heads, and living in fear for thousands of years were about to learn that none of it had ever been necessary. I had a feeling we were about to become very busy. The news traveled faster than I expected. Within a week of our battle with Zyrtax, other species from across this region of space began to contact us. They had heard rumors. They had picked up signals. They wanted to know if the stories were true. Had someone really defeated the Eternal Empire? Was it possible that the gold ships were not as powerful as everyone had always believed? My ship, the Silver Arrow, became the most important vessel in the galaxy almost overnight. Along with the 3 other ships from the human fleet, we were given a new mission by Earth. We were to visit every world that Zyrtax had claimed as part of his empire. We were to show them the truth. We were to help them understand that their long years of fear had been based on a lie. Zyrtax himself was on my ship. We had given him a small room and a seat at our meetings. He was not a prisoner exactly, but he was not free either. He came along because he wanted to. He said he needed to see the damage he had caused. He needed to look these species in the eye and tell them the truth himself. Our first stop was a water planet called Meloria, home to a species called the Crethani. They were tall and thin, with smooth blue skin and large eyes. They lived mostly underwater in beautiful cities made of coral and glowing stone. They had been part of the Eternal Empire for over 400 years. When our ships arrived at Meloria, we were met by a group of Crithani leaders. They rose up from the water in small flying bubbles, which they used to meet visitors from other species. Their leader was an elderly female named Talai. She had silver streaks in her long hair and kind, sad eyes. "Captain Holloway," she said through our translation system, "we received your message. We have also been watching the news from other worlds. Is it really true? Is the Eternal Empire truly beaten?" "It is true," I said. "I have Zertax with me. He has come to speak with you." Talai's eyes widened. "The Emperor himself is here." "Yes." Zertax stepped forward. He looked very small standing next to me, and even smaller compared to the tall Crithani. He was no longer wearing his big crown. He was wearing a simple gray outfit that made him look like any other small creature. "Greetings, Elder Talai," Zertax said quietly. "I have come to say I am sorry." Talai studied him for a long moment. I could not read her expression. She was not smiling. She was not angry. She just looked at him carefully, like she was trying to decide if what she was seeing was real. "For 400 years," she said finally, "we have given 20% of everything we produce to your empire, our food, our medicine, our energy, our art. We thought if we did not, you would destroy our cities and hurt our children." "Yes," Zertax said. "But you could not have destroyed our cities. You never could have. Your weapons would not have worked properly against our shields. Your soldiers could not have breathed our air for more than a few minutes." Zertax looked down at the ground. "You are right, Elder Talai, we could not have, but we told you we could, and you believed us." Talai was silent for a long time. Then, to my surprise, she began to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has just realized that they have been tricked for their entire life. It was the laugh of someone who is trying not to cry. 400 years, she said between laughs. 400 years of giving up our children's food so that your empire could stay fat and happy. 400 years of teaching our young ones to bow their heads when they saw your flag. 400 years of fear, for nothing, for absolutely nothing. The other Crithani leaders looked at each other. Some of them looked angry. Some of them looked sad. Some of them looked lost, as if they did not know what to feel. "We could have just said no," Talai continued. "We could have just said no to your first demand 400 years ago, and you would have had no power to do anything about it." "Yes," Zertax said again. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Why did you do this?" Talai asked. "Why did you make us suffer for so long when you could not have done anything to us if we had refused?" Zertax took a deep breath. "Because my ancestors did it to my grandfather's people first. Because it worked. Because I thought it was the way things were supposed to be. I never questioned it. I never thought about what it meant for the people we took from. I was taught that I was great and that my empire was mighty, and I believed it without ever testing it." Talai wiped her eyes. The laughter had stopped. Now she just looked tired. "Captain Holloway," she said, turning to me, "your species saved us. Without you, we would still be paying tribute. We would still be afraid. We would still be believing lies." "We did not do it on purpose," I said honestly. "We just happened to be the first species that did not already know we were supposed to be afraid. We met Zertax and we laughed at him. And that was all it took." Talai smiled a little. "Then laughter is the greatest weapon in the galaxy." "Maybe it is," I said. After our meeting with Talai, we visited 12 more worlds over the next 2 months. The stories were all similar. Species that had been paying tribute for hundreds or even thousands of years. Species that had built their entire cultures around the fear of the gold ships. Species that had forgotten what freedom even felt like. On a rocky planet called Korvax, we met a species of insect-like warriors called the Morvax. They were strong and proud. with 4 arms and hard outer shells. Their leader was a warrior named Crest. When we told him the truth about the Eternal Empire, he was so angry that he broke a stone table with his fist. 800 years, he shouted. 800 years my people have been slaves to this lie. Our warriors have not lifted a weapon in battle for 8 centuries. Our children are taught to be farmers and builders instead of fighters. We have forgotten who we are. I am sorry, Zyrtec said quietly. Crest turned to him. For a moment I thought he might hurt Zyrtec. His 4 hands were shaking with anger, but then he just sighed and sat down on a stone bench. Sorry will not bring back what you took from us, he said, but at least now we can rebuild. On another world, we met a species made of living crystals called the Silicate Collective. They communicated through light patterns, and their leader was a being named Chime. The Silicates had been paying Zyrtec 80% of their mineral production for over 2,000 years. When they heard the truth, they did not get angry. They just went very quiet. Then one by one, their bodies began to glow in new patterns. Chime told me they were experiencing something they had not felt in many generations. It was called hope. Not every world we visited reacted the same way. Some were angry, some were sad. Some wanted to take revenge on Zyrtec, and we had to protect him from harm more than once. But most species, after the initial shock, began to look forward instead of backward. They had a chance to start over, to rebuild, to remember who they had been before the Eternal Empire had come and demanded their tribute. During all of this, something strange was happening. Other humans were coming out to space in larger numbers. Earth was sending more ships, more diplomats, more scientists, and more teachers. The humans did not try to take over the species that Zyrtec had freed. Instead, they offered friendship. They offered trade. They offered to share technology. They offered to learn about each of the new species they met. Within 6 months, there was talk of forming a new group. Not an empire, not a confederation of conquered worlds, but a true partnership between species. A place where no one species would have power over all the others. A place where each world could keep its own culture, its own leaders, and its own way of life. The other species loved the idea. They had never heard of anything like it before. In the rest of the galaxy, when one species met another, someone usually ended up on top and someone usually ended up on bottom. That was just how things worked. But the humans were proposing something different, something new. I remember one conversation I had with Talai of the Crethani during my second visit to Meloria. We were standing on a small island watching the sun set over the glowing water. "Captain Holloway," she said, "your species is unusual. You have weapons that could easily defeat all of our species combined. You have technology that could take you anywhere you wanted to go. You could become the next Eternal Empire, but even worse, because your weapons actually work." "Yes, we could," I said. "Why do you not do this?" I thought about the question for a long time before I answered. "Because we have read our own history," I finally said. "Earth is old, older than most of you know, and we have had many empires in our past, many tribes, many nations, many groups that tried to rule over other groups. Most of them failed badly. The ones that succeeded caused a lot of pain. We learned slowly that making others suffer is not the same as being strong, and we learned that the best way to be powerful is to help others be powerful too. That is a very wise lesson." "We learned it the hard way," I said, "many times, and some humans still have not learned it, but most of us have, and that is who came out to the stars." Talai smiled. "Then the galaxy is lucky that it was humans who found us first." I looked out at the setting sun. The sky was full of colors I had never seen before, and the water reflected them all like a giant mirror. I thought about how close we had come to being just another empire. If things had gone just a little differently, if the humans who came out to space had been different kinds of humans, this story might have had a very different ending. But we had gotten lucky, and maybe, just maybe, we could help the galaxy get lucky too. That evening, I received a message on my personal communicator. It was from Earth, signed by the President of the United Human Council. Captain Holloway, it read. Zyrtax has requested a meeting. He says he wants to stand before a full council of all the species he once ruled over. He wants to face judgment. He has asked if you will bring him. Do you accept this mission? I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back my answer. Yes, I accept. I did not know what was going to happen at this meeting. Zyrtax was a broken man. The species he had hurt were starting to recover, but many still had deep wounds. Putting them all in the same room together could go many different ways. But I had a feeling that whatever happened next would change the galaxy forever. The Grand Council was scheduled to happen 6 weeks later. It would take place on a neutral planet called Vorin, which had never been part of the Eternal Empire. The Vorins had offered to host the meeting because they wanted to be part of the new galactic community and thought this would be a good way to introduce themselves. They were a tall, elegant species with long white hair and golden eyes. Their planet was covered in mountains and forests, and their cities were built into the sides of cliffs. As the day of the council approached, I felt more nervous than I had before any battle. This was going to be something new, something that had never happened before in the history of this part of the galaxy. 47 different species, all in one place, all at one table, all discussing their future together. The day before the council, I sat down with Zyrtax for a long talk. We were in a private room on a space station that was orbiting Vorin. Zyrtax looked thinner than he had before. He had lost some weight in the months since his defeat. He had also lost something else, though, something harder to see. The pride, the fake confidence, the belief that he was special or better than others. All of that was gone now. Are you ready for tomorrow? I asked him. No, he said honestly, but I will do it anyway. It is the least I can do. What are you going to say to them? He looked down at his 4 small hands. I do not know yet. I have been trying to think of the right words, but nothing feels right. How do you say sorry for 3,000 years of taking? How do you apologize for wasting the lives of entire generations? Maybe you do not say it in words, I suggested. Maybe you just stand there and let them speak. Let them tell you what they want to tell you. Let them be angry if they need to be angry. He nodded slowly. Yes, I think that is a good idea. The next morning, we traveled down to Vorin in a small shuttle. The Grand Council Hall was a huge round building built into the side of a mountain. It had a high glass ceiling that let in the sunlight. Inside, there was a large circle of seats, with each seat marked for a different species. There were 47 seats in all, plus a central platform where speakers could stand. As we entered the hall, I could see that every seat was filled. Representatives from every world Zyrtax had once ruled were there. Some were tall, some were short. Some had fur, some had scales, some were made of crystals or gases. Some had 2 arms, some had 4, some had 8. They were all so different from each other, and yet they all had one thing in common. They had all, at some point, bowed their heads to Zyrtax's empire. In addition to the 47 species, there was a section for observers, representatives from species that had not been conquered but wanted to see what happened, scientists, historians, journalists. There were even a few humans from Earth sitting in the observer section, including my old friend Admiral Carter from the Earth military. I walked Zyrtax to the central platform. He climbed the small steps slowly. He stood on the platform and looked around at all the faces staring at him. I could see his 4 hands shaking. Elder Taeli of the Crethani rose from her seat. As the oldest leader present, she had been chosen to speak first. Zyrtax, she said, her voice carried across the whole hall. We have gathered here to decide what to do with you. Some of us want justice. Some of us want answers. Some of us just want to look at you and finally see you as you really are. Not as a mighty emperor, not as a feared ruler, but as what you have always been. A small creature who tricked an entire section of the galaxy. Zyrtax bowed his head. He did not argue, he did not defend himself. Before we decide anything, Taeli continued, we want to hear from you. Tell us everything. Leave nothing out. Then we will decide what happens next." Zyrtax took a deep breath. Then he began to speak. He spoke for over 2 hours. He told them about his grandfather who had taught him the family secrets. He told them about the first conquest 3,000 years ago, when his ancestor had discovered that species would surrender just at the sight of a big ship and a loud voice. He told them about the system that had been built up over the centuries, where each new emperor was taught to pretend he was mighty while never actually testing whether he was. He told them about the weapons that had never been fired, the ships that had never been properly maintained, the soldiers who had never trained for real battle. He told them everything. And when he was done, he stood on the platform in silence, waiting for their judgment. For a long moment, no one spoke. The whole hall was quiet. Then slowly, representatives began to stand up. One by one, they told their stories. The Krithani spoke about the children they had lost because they did not have enough food after giving so much in tribute. The Morvacs spoke about the warrior culture that had been destroyed by hundreds of years of forced peace. The Silicates spoke about the art and music that had been stolen from them. The Tarkans, a forest-dwelling species, spoke about how their great trees had been cut down to pay taxes. On and on it went, dozens of species, hundreds of stories, pain going back generations. Zyrtax listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He just listened. And as each story was told, he seemed to grow smaller and smaller until he looked like a tiny child standing alone on the big stage. After several hours, all the species had spoken. Talai stood up again. "Now," she said, "we must decide what happens to Zyrtax. There are those who want to end him. There are those who want to put him in prison for the rest of his life. There are those who want to forgive him. What do we do?" The hall erupted in 100 different voices, all talking at once. Some angry, some sad, some confused. Then Crest of the Morvacs stood up. He was taller than everyone else in the room. His 4 arms were crossed over his armored chest. "I had planned to demand his life," Crest said in his deep voice. "I had planned to ask that he face the worst punishment our people could give." The hall grew quiet. "But as I listened to him speak today," Crest continued, "I realized something. Zyrtax is not the real problem. He is just the last link in a chain that was 3,000 years long. If we take him out of the picture, have we really changed anything? Or have we just replaced one small problem with a new one?" "What are you suggesting?" Talai asked. "I suggest we let him live," Crest said. "But not as a ruler, not even as a prisoner. Let him spend the rest of his days traveling to every world he hurt. Let him help rebuild what his empire took. Let him teach his own people, the ones who survive on his home world, that the eternal empire was a lie. Let his punishment be to spend his life undoing the damage he caused." The hall was quiet again. Then slowly other representatives began to stand up and agree. One by one, species after species, they all saw the wisdom in what Crest had said. I looked at Zyrtax. Tears were streaming down his purple face. He did not look relieved. He looked even more broken than before. I understood why. Death would have been easy. Prison would have been easy. But spending the rest of his life working to undo his mistakes would be hard. Very hard. Impossibly hard. And he would have to do it every single day. Talai called for a final vote. 47 species voted. Every single one agreed with Crest's suggestion. "So it is decided," Talai said. "Zyrtax, you will live, but your life is no longer your own. It belongs to the species you harmed. You will spend it making things right. Do you accept this?" "Yes," Zyrtax whispered. "Yes, I accept." And then something amazing happened. Something I had not expected at all. Talai raised her thin blue hand. "There is one more thing to discuss today," she said. "The humans have made a suggestion. They have proposed that we form a new group, a partnership of species, not an empire, not a federation where the strongest rules, but a true union of equals where each world keeps its own government but we all work together for our shared future. Shall we discuss this now?" The hall came alive with voices. Everyone had questions. Everyone had ideas. Everyone had opinions. But the conversation was different now than it had been before. Before, when species met other species, there was always a question of who was going to be in charge, who was going to be the most powerful. Now, for the first time in the history of this part of the galaxy, a new question was being asked. How can we work together as equals? The talks went on for 3 more days. I sat through most of them, sometimes speaking, mostly listening. The humans did not try to push our ideas on anyone. We suggested things. We answered questions. We offered help. But we let each species decide for itself what it wanted to do. By the end of the 3rd day, a rough agreement had been reached. The new group would be called the Partnership of Free Worlds. Each species would have 1 vote, no matter how big or small it was. Each species would keep its own laws, its own leaders, and its own culture. Trade would be fair. Technology would be shared. And no species could ever force another to do anything against its will. When the agreement was signed, all 47 species cheered. Then they looked at Zertax, who was still sitting quietly in the corner where he had been placed. "What about the Eternal Empire's home world?" someone asked. "What about the small purple creatures who lived under Zertax's rule? Will they be part of this partnership?" Talai looked at Zertax. "That is up to them," she said, "and up to him. If they want to join us, they may. If they want to stand on their own, they may do that too. But if they ever try to rebuild their empire, we will be ready. And this time, we will not be afraid of big ships and loud voices." Zertax nodded. "They will want to join," he said. "After they learn the truth. They are not bad people. They were just taught bad things, like I was. I think they will want to be better." 1 year later, I was back on the Silver Arrow, heading out to explore new parts of the galaxy. We had heard rumors of other species out there. Species that had never been part of Zertax's empire. Species who might want to join the partnership, or species who might have problems of their own. Either way, we wanted to find them. Grace was still my first officer. Peter was still my sensor officer. Most of my original crew had stayed with me, though we had added a few new members, including a Krithani scientist named Lore and a Morvax engineer named Vask. They had wanted to join the human fleet and see the galaxy, and I had been happy to take them. One evening, as we were flying between star systems, Grace brought me a report. It was about Zertax. "How is he doing?" I asked. "He just finished his tour of the Silicate Collective," Grace said. "Helped them rebuild an entire mining operation. Stayed for 6 months. Apparently he is very good at organizing things once he puts his mind to it." "Good for him." "There is something else, sir." She was smiling. "He has become something of a celebrity." "A celebrity, Zertax?" "Yes, sir. He has been telling his story on every world he visits, about how he was just a tiny creature in a big crown who tricked the whole galaxy. He has become quite funny, actually. People say his speeches are hilarious. Some worlds have started inviting him just for the entertainment." I laughed out loud. "Zertax is a stand-up comedian now." "Apparently so, sir, and a very good one." I shook my head in amazement. Life in the galaxy was strange. Just 1 year ago, this creature had been the feared ruler of 14 worlds. Now he was traveling around making people laugh at how silly his old empire had been. He was helping rebuild the lives he had once made worse. And somehow, by doing this, he was finding a kind of peace. "What do humans think about all of this?" I asked Grace, back on Earth. "Most people still cannot quite believe what happened," she said. "They watch the videos of our first meeting with Zertax and they laugh. They have made songs about it. There are plays being performed. Schools are teaching children about the day humanity met the galaxy and could not stop laughing." "Is that what they are calling it?" "That is exactly what they are calling it, sir." I looked out the window at the stars. They stretched out in every direction like a field of diamonds spread across black velvet. Somewhere out there, other species were waiting to be found. New cultures, New languages, new stories. Some of them would be friendly. Some of them might not be. But I knew we would figure it out one species at a time. Captain, Peter called from his station. I am picking up a signal. It is from a new species, one we have never met before. What are they saying? Peter listened for a moment. Then he turned to me with a strange look on his face. Sir, they are demanding our surrender. They say they are the great dominion of something, something destroyer, and they say if we do not bow down to them, they will crush us. My whole crew went quiet. Then slowly everyone began to smile. Oh no, Grace said, trying not to laugh. Not another one. Put them on the screen, I said with a sigh, but I was smiling too. The face that appeared on our main screen was green this time, not purple. The crown was a little smaller. The throne was a little less fancy, but the voice was the same, loud, trying to be scary, full of empty threats and big words. My crew tried to hold in their laughter. They really did. But then the green creature declared that he had conquered at least 20 worlds, and my entire bridge exploded in laughter. Here we go again, I thought. The galaxy was full of surprises, but at least we had a lot of practice now. I sat back in my chair and got ready to ruin another tyrant's day. Life was good.